Hello, everyone. I'm Arturo Mendiola, Chief Growth Officer here from Shift. Thanks for joining us today on our webinar, Counterintuitive CX. With me today, I have Michiel from Optimizely. Michiel, you want to introduce yourself?
And yeah, like you said, I'm Michiel Dorjee. I run digital for Optimizely. I always jokingly say we're like customer zero, and we're both the best and worst customer that we have because we get to use all of our own features first and kind of help customers and partners implement. But we also don't pay for anything ourselves. So yeah, that's always my little joke. And back to you.
Michiel, excited to have you with us today. So let's get started and kick off the webinar. I'm going to start with something that might make everybody uncomfortable. And our perspective and what we see in the world happen today is your CX investment is probably failing. And it's not because you lack data or technology or talent. It's actually failing because you're optimizing for metrics that don't matter. You're personalizing experiences that customers actively avoid, and you're doing A/B testing in a way that is kind of leading to mediocrity. And there's actually a reality behind this. In fact, our friends at Optimizely did a study, and one data point that they found is that 70% of A/B tests result in no statistically significant improvement, right? So you're kind of doing small incremental things. The other thing that's been found is that only 22% of shoppers are actually satisfied with current personalization levels. And 63% of customers are highly annoyed with generic messaging blasts. All of these things are very obvious and clear and present. But today we're not talking about basic personalization or omni-channel buzzwords. We want to really deconstruct why most CX efforts fail and reveal the counterintuitive strategies that create sustainable competitive moats. So what we'll cover today is why the conventional CX playbook is kind of broken and somewhat obsolete, the counterintuitive science behind profitable experience design, real transformation that challenged every best practice, and then strategies that forward-thinking companies are using to outsmart and outperform their competitors. So again, maybe another uncomfortable moment, but let's start by destroying some universal truths. And to a certain degree, why we believe everyone is sort of an hyperbole, but there's a lot of companies and brands out there that are getting CX wrong. So the question is, why do a lot of brands and organizations get CX wrong? Well, everyone talks about personalization driving revenue. And there's data that shows that industry giants have learned the hard way. 80% of customers are more likely to purchase from companies providing tailored experiences, but only 22% are, as I mentioned before, satisfied with that current personalization effort. The problem is companies are personalizing features and not for outcomes. They're optimizing for engagement metrics that don't correlate with business results. In fact, major brands that we all know and love, for instance, Netflix is one of those. Netflix learned a multi-million-dollar lesson the hard way. What they found is when they were looking at their recommendation algorithm, they were optimizing for engagement, so things like time watched. And sometimes that algorithm recommended content that started to decrease overall customer satisfaction. And that was actually a study done by the Harvard Business Review. So although users watched more, they started to enjoy less. That ultimately led to higher long-term churn, despite having higher short-term engagement metrics. So they had to fundamentally redesign their approach to balance engagement with viewer satisfaction. Another brand that we all know of, and we probably have our accounts and profiles, is Facebook. So Facebook did a study that found that optimizing for engagement metrics like likes, hearts, comments, shares, often promoted content that actually made users feel worse. So this is sort of that echo chamber effect. And that led to decreased platform satisfaction, despite, again, higher engagement numbers. And they were optimizing for the wrong outcome entirely. So the core issue here is that both companies, again, while measuring activity, they weren't measuring value. They forgot about that part. So the engagement without satisfaction really creates a hollow experience that customers eventually abandon. So again, while you get that short-term gain, that long-term risk of churn and attrition and loss of membership and loyalty is a true risk that we all need to be thinking about. So admittedly, some of us, and I'm going to raise my own hand, have been sucked into this vortex of incremental optimization. Today, I think we've all been there. We celebrate 2 to 5% improvements while missing sometimes those breakthrough opportunities, which becomes this metrics mismatch, right? We're testing for statistical significance without the strategic business relevance or customer impact behind it. And so when you think about ourselves and our competition, which side do we want to be on? Forrester did some research as well, and they found that really companies fall into two distinct performance tiers. The first is our CX leaders, really the top 10%. So these leaders design for experiences that customers can't get elsewhere. They focus on customer capability, not just the satisfaction part. And about 4 to 5% revenue growth, what they realize in terms of being a leader and what they do for counterintuitive CX above the market. And these are studies that have been done by Bain. The rest are the followers. So it's pretty much everyone else. They tend to follow industry standards and best practices. They optimize existing experiences, again, incrementally. And they might fall into the Netflix or the Facebook trap of, again, optimizing for the wrong metrics. So the question is, are you measuring engagement or are you actually measuring customer impact and value? So this all leads to the meat and potatoes, or if you're in other parts of the world, chicken and chickpeas, part of our webinar today. And it's really the 3 counterintuitive CX principles. Principle number 1, strategic effort design. So again, friction is actually a little bit of a good thing when you think about user design. And I'll talk more about that. Principle number 2, customer capability versus customer convenience. And then principle number 3 is long-term value architecture. So let's begin with principle number 1, strategic effort design. Multiple behavioral economic studies demonstrate that the appropriate level of difficulty actually increases perceived value. There was a study done by the Journal of Consumer Psychology, and they coined it the IKEA effect. What they found with IKEA specifically is that people value products 63% higher when they assembled it themselves. Another study done by the Journal of Experimental Social Psychology called it the effort heuristic. And they found that consumers use effort as a cue for quality and value. Again, products requiring more effort are perceived as a higher value or higher quality. And then the last, this was an MIT study. It was the pain of payment research. And that study found that some friction in purchasing actually increases satisfaction with that actual purchase. So as the effort creates this psychological investment in that outcome that they just invested in. So when tasks require meaningful effort, and again, I want to tread the line here lightly, not annoying effort, meaningful, it really does pay dividends. So in other words, when customers are involved in the process, the outcomes are more highly valued and the people become more committed to the results. So one example of strategic effort design is progressive disclosure. So if you are a fan of Teslas, at least the cars and the process of the experience of buying a Tesla, Tesla's process for configuration is very complicated. There's a lot of steps, but it actually correlates with higher customer satisfaction and lower return rates. So if you've ever gone through that process, you can configure your Tesla, everything from the seats, the cloth, the leather, how you want the dash to look, all the way down to every single little detail. And when you do that, obviously, it takes a long time, but when you pick up your Tesla, it is an amazing experience because you're so excited because you've created that custom bespoke version of Tesla for yourself. Well, another example is in B2B or qualification friction. So in B2B services, that actually might require a prospect some level of investment in discovery, especially if you have a complicated product or service. But again, in that research and that effort of investment to understand your product or service, there's usually, and it leads to higher close rates due to that effort heuristic that I talked about earlier. So the key here is not about making things harder. It's really about making the right things appropriately involved to trigger the effort heuristic and increase psychological investment through the pain of payment principle.
So mapping down to what we offer as Optimizely to our software and our experimentation platform, we see that if you actually measure the levels of strategic effort in design, it can offer longer high-term value. So not just like the immediate conversion that people take on the page, but applying that to each of those different levels as we see in the funnel. So to give you an example, for instance, in variation A, you might measure that one direct click on sign up has very minimal effort, it's very direct, someone clicks something and they're done. On the second level, in the second variation, variation B, it might take 2 steps and it might make that journey slightly longer. It might require like email verification or maybe increase the level of complexity and effort that people require to sign up by a slight step. On the third, in variation C, you might even ask them to complete a profile first and set their preferences. And lastly, in the fourth variation, you might even have a multi-step assessment at the front of the sign-up process, including some personalized recommendations. This requires the maximum level of effort and friction. The key insight here is that Optimizely allows you not just to measure the checkout completion rate, but the customer lifetime value per visitor and the return purchase rate. This makes sure that you're providing the right level of strategic friction, and that even in variation 3, you can lower the immediate conversion rate, but have a long-term, high-term value for the customers. One of the examples that I always love to use with this is if I would ask a customer, for instance, on an iPhone to set up a timer, they generally rate the timers easier to set on an iPhone than it was on an old Nokia phone. Even though those steps were drastically shorter to set a timer. It's only a couple of clicks to do that on an old Nokia phone, but I would say everybody, including me, would rate an iPhone as an easier process to set up a timer or an alarm. So within Optimizely, we have a couple of key features that allow marketers and customer experience designers to calibrate to the right level of strategic effort. This might include things like ratio metrics for long-term value. We recently released a feature called ratio metrics, which allows you to set this metric up in your A/B tests and multivariate tests, and using a numerator and denominator to reflect business-specific key performance indicators, essentially allowing you to track rates between different metrics instead of just the absolute increase or decrease of metrics. There's also multi-stage conversion tracking. So this allows you to set up experiments that track the entire customer journey through multiple points of friction, not just measuring the immediate drop-off, but long-term engagement and value. We also released experience templates for testing. This feature was formerly known as extensions, but it essentially speeds up the development and creation of these tests, allowing you to streamline your experiment creation and campaign creation. All of these features together allow you to quickly deploy and test some common strategic effort design patterns, like progressive profiling in forms, multi-step onboarding flows, qualification questionnaires, and even educational content requirements. Traditional A/B testing focuses more on reducing friction to maximize the immediate conversions, whereas Optimizely's advanced capabilities let you test for the effort heuristics, like does this requiring more effort actually increase the perceived value, or maybe even measuring the pain of payment principle, like does increasing the difficulty on payment increase its satisfaction? And lastly, optimizing for the long-term value. Like we said before, this helps you find the sweet spot that maximizes the customer lifetime value, not just the immediate conversion rate.
Really good insights, Michiel, and I love to see how Optimizely can really enable that effort heuristic and the payment of payment process and the value, perceived value behind all of that. Let's get into the second counterintuitive CX principle, which is customer capability versus customer convenience. Again, as most companies optimize for convenience, leaders in that top 10%, as I showed on that earlier slide, are really optimizing for customer capability as well, keeping that in mind. We show that customer education and understanding also drives significant business results. So in some cases, self-service users have 88% higher retention rates. Customers who use self-service options are 3 times more likely to repurchase. It's according to Forrester. And then proper and diligent customer onboarding can actually increase retention by about 82%. And it's all in the notion of this learning investment. Customers who invest effort in understanding your brand or company solutions and offerings essentially just become more committed. And that confidence building leads to increased customer capability that reduces support costs, obviously the internal operational costs, whether that's to your call center or to your sales team, and then enables them to do it on their own, which again, as I mentioned earlier, when they do it on their own, that increases their own satisfaction and perceived value. So again, along with that comes the network impact or the sociability of that. When customers really kind of invest in your brand and they become essentially advocates because they know it so well and they've gone through that effort, they start to become advocates and educators for others that may be interested in your customer product that aren't current customers today.
So within this principle, the Optimizely platform helps you build that customer capability through content. So for one, we can build, for instance, an educational content architecture. If I look at the Optimizely CMS, it offers the most intuitive drag and drop visual content editor, specifically designed for marketers. Combined with experimentation, you can create meaningful experiences that drive engagement and conversions, while making sure that you're empowering customers to learn about and embrace your company's product and service offering. So let's talk about that strategic implementation for marketers. A B2B SaaS example, for instance, is that when we create a really simple static getting started PDF guide using the Optimizely CMS to build these progressive learning paths, on level 1, you might decide to create a basic feature tutorial with interactive elements. On level 2, you might decide to create a more advanced use case scenario, maybe with branching content types. And on that third level, you might decide to integrate workshops and a certification path. The measurement you would use to track success here is content progression, not just content consumption. So if I apply that same example to B2C, for instance, in retail, rather than streamlining your product pages, you could create educational experiences. So taking product educational modules like how-to content embedded into the purchase flows. Even care and maintenance content, making sure that you build that long-term relationship with your products. And lastly, using comparison tools, which teaches your customers what the equivalent value in quality and price is versus your competitors. The result of this would be that your customers become product experts and actually increases the loyalty and reduces returns, hypercritical to optimizing experiences. Another idea is that you can leverage AI that helps educate. So building educational AI that helps customer knowledge and capability. Some examples might include a style consultant agent that teaches fashion to customers like color theory, body types, and styling principles. Or if I apply that same thing to nutrition, you could develop a nutrition guide agent that educates customers on ingredients, dietary needs, and even meal planning. And lastly, like I named before, the more care content, you could develop something like a home maintenance expert agent that helps guide homeowners through seasonal care and improvement of their projects. In the end, the business impact of this is that customers become brand advocates through expertise. They can help drive referrals, and they will go for more premium purchases than the typical purchases they would take. Using Optimizely's built-in AI, Opal, this can help serve as the foundation for these customer-facing educational AI agents. It requires some level of configuration and customization to the base foundation of the platform. Like in phase 1, you'll have to set up Opal using its existing capabilities to create these basic educational agents. And then in phase 2, you can help enhance that with custom knowledge bases and workflows. Like you can actually build it out that make it suit your brand. And then thirdly, you can even integrate Optimizely's data platform for more personalized learning paths. And then in phase 4, building on top of all of that, what we just set up, you can use web experimentation to optimize using optimization agents that can help increase effectiveness. You'll need to give it the domain expertise and the workflow specific to your industries and your customers' education goals. And then the no-code interface makes it accessible to marketers without requiring technical development resources.
Amazing. And I have seen Opal, and it is everything that I've heard. And so one of the things that I'd love to offer is if you have any questions on Opal, Michiel is here to answer those either post-webinar, or we're happy to set up a meeting to talk more about it. But as we get into the last principle, it's all about building that long-term value architecture. So when you think about optimization, we might think about the immediate conversions, but again, leaders design for beyond that. They design for compound customer value. Whereas traditional CX metrics actually might focus on individual interactions. Really, how do you get above that and measure for customer progression and capability growth? So this is where compound experiences come into play. So things like learning loops, where each interaction builds on customer capability from the one before it and the one before that. Progressive value, where experiences improve as a customer engages more deeply. Again, you're rewarding them for learning and building a capability for your product or your service offering. And then comprehension modes. Really, this is the idea of once customer builds up that understanding of your product and they have that expertise of it, that knowledge becomes a motivator to not switch because they know it so well. All that leading to say, customers that measure long-term customer development actually show consistently higher growth rates than those optimizing only for immediate satisfaction.
While everyone's obsessing over immediate conversions, quarterly metrics, and short-term wins, but like Arturo outlined, the real competitive advantage here is designing these experiences in a way that compounds value over time. This isn't about just designing for customer retention, it's about creating these lasting customer relationships that get more valuable with every interaction. Think of it like a compound interest, but for customer expertise and loyalty. At Optimizely, we've architected our platform specifically for this long-term value approach. While other platforms help you optimize individual touch points, we can help you orchestrate the entire development journey. Our latest data warehouse analytics and unified data platform enable you to measure and optimize for what really matters: customer capability growth and compound relationship value. Optimizely's warehouse native experimentation analytics are now available, and this integration brings the element of a data warehouse directly into analytics. You can use this in feature experimentation and web experimentation. We can also support customer capability tracking. We've released a new personalization advisor instruction agent, which uses Opal to help website and experimentation platform users uncover design and measure high-value personalization opportunities.
Thanks, Michiel. Again, it's great to see how Opal is coming into play and really advancing how marketers and CX designers can optimize experiences, again, with the right level of friction and effort. That all being said, we've done some great work with a shared client, a national home warranty services provider. This home warranty provider has been an industry leader for about 40 years. And their whole premise and business model is providing affordable protection plans for home systems. Think about like your appliances breaking down, things like a washer and dryer, or your washing machine in terms of like your dishes. And what they do is they help minimize those costs when those things fail due to normal wear and tear. And they're on a mission to help people during those difficult times. Again, if you've ever experienced that, I think I had my washer break down and I couldn't wash my clothes for a few days. And I had to go to this conference and I needed a shirt to wear. So again, I was kind of freaking out. But in that instance, when you have that warranty, the service provider comes day of and they take care of it. And so again, this is a provider that has a full network across the nation for homeowners in those times of need. And so what we did for them is they came to us with a problem that we had to help essentially kind of rebuild their 30-year-old business model. And what we found is that their experience was actually kind of their biggest vulnerability. What was happening is customers didn't actually understand how their coverage worked or how to actually employ and apply the service that they needed when they needed it. So it started to lead to churn. And so we needed to quickly stop that leak. So one of the strategies that we employed was looking at this again from a strategic effort or strategic friction implementation. So before, instant online claims with 98% approval rates. That was happening before we did the work. Afterwards, we included another level of guided diagnostic processing requiring some customer education. And what happened is that resulted in 23% reduction in fraudulent claims and 45% increase in customer retention. The other thing we did for them was looked at how we had education over just convenience. So again, as a part of serving them, there was a simplified mobile app for quick transactions. That was a baseline. as a part of the work that we did, we layered on interactive learning modules about home systems, appliances, and things that you might need to care for. This resulted in actually about 34% reduced repeat claims for the same issues. And the third thing we did was looked at how we had capability building architecture into this model. So whereas before, the customer service center really solved all of their problems. What we layered on was self-service tools that really taught customers how to create and solve their own problems that were lower risk or sort of lower involvement and complexity. This led to 28% reduction in call center volume. It also increased customer advocacy by about 67% in terms of scoring. All that to say, over the last 18 months, we've seen an 89% increase in customer lifetime value. And what we're seeing in the market is that they're really the only provider offering really this comprehensive education. So again, when we scanned the competitors, they were kind of addressing the transactional needs of fulfilling on their service warranty offering. But again, we went on the front end and said, how do we help educate these policy owners to make sure that we also help them enable that they don't have to run into these problems in the first place, thereby filing a claim. Additionally, we created the comprehension mode for this customer. And what we're seeing is that now their policy holders can't really get this level of equivalent expertise anywhere else. And so really we've helped stop optimizing for customer convenience, which we still is important to us and we have a lens on, but we've also started optimizing for customer competence. The other thing that we did as a part of this work really connected the three key audiences that our customer works with. So the engagement was more than just a front end design in terms of improving the experience or development solution. The application that we worked on through all this work really created a seamless connection between policyholders and service agents. So within minutes of a claim being filed, local service providers, as a part of this customer's, our client's network of service providers, are notified through the contractor mobile app to fix that issue. And then from there, that service provider can go to the app and accept or begin work on that ticket quickly without needing to have any involvement from the real estate agent. So again, we're making things better, not only just for the end customer / policyholders, we're making it a better experience and full sort of holistic approach model that includes their service providers as well as their real estate agents within their network.
So this transformation really requires letting go of those traditional customer experience metrics for more outcome-based measurement. So some of those new success metrics might include a customer knowledge index, maybe measuring their progressive assessment over time. Another might be a system of understanding score, where you're tracking their use of interactive tools, or maybe a customer advocacy score, where customers are becoming referral sources for your business. Another might be a capability progression, so being able to track customers over time in their own self-sufficiency. Optimizely's role within this is we can help you track that using long-term testing. So maybe an 18-month customer journey can be optimized in a different way than a short-term, really direct conversion point might be. So Optimizely's role within this, for instance, could be that we're helping you test for long-term value. So creating an 18-month customer journey. Another might be helping optimize for educational content, testing learning approaches versus just convenience. Or another might be progressive profiling, helping build that customer knowledge profile without privacy violations. And lastly, the measurement revolution. So making sure that you measure success for customers in their capability growth, not just their satisfaction scores.
So with that concludes, again, like I mentioned, the meat and potatoes of our webinar. As you can see, there's more to measuring not only engagement, but also value over time in business outcomes. So wanted to share this perspective to think not just about the immediate term, but long term. With that all being said, one of the things that Shift is offering to all attendees of this webinar is a complimentary, what we're calling a CX spot check. Really what it is, it's, like I said, complimentary, no cost, no obligation, a high impact assessment. So our team of CX experts will evaluate your public facing customer journey and we'll diagnose any conversion leaks. We'll look at ways to improve things both short-term and then tie back to those business outcomes. And then we deliver a prioritized roadmap and to help you fix things fast. So again, things that we might assess are journey continuity across platforms, adoption and usability, site speed, accessibility. So again, everything from foundational to higher end opportunities. So if you're interested, we have resources in our resourcing links on the side of the webinar. Feel free to sign up for that. And with that, we thank everyone for joining, and we'll see you at the next one. Thank you, everybody.